Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons & Dragons and horror. Today, we will explore the domain of Bluetspur, an inhospitable and alien domain where unspeakable horrors lurk beneath the surface. Before we begin, some brief announcements and clarifications. First, I would like to refer to you the new book by Jason Bowers from PhD&D channel at DM's Guild, called Ravenloft Adventures. The PhD&D channel has great videos on Ravenloft domains, with ideas on how to create adventures in the new versions of domains presented by Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and also present great reference on source material on other media as inspiration for these adventures. Now, he has released a book on DM's Guild, presenting these adventures, and he intends to release 2 other volumes later this year, with other adventures that he developed on his channel. I'll leave the link to this book in the video description. I would also like to thank you for the feedback we are getting with our latest book, The Weathermaid's Survival Guide to the Mists. We are very proud of our book, and very happy with the messages and feedback we received so far. If you haven't checked out our material on DM's Guild yet, I'll leave the link below, and you all can expect other new releases from the Black Feather soon. I was absent from the channel's traditional videos for most of the month, due to the book launch and some personal commitments, but I promise that we are now back to explore the insane landscape of Bluetspur. Bluetspur is a domain that first appeared in the first box of the setting, the Ravenloft Realm of Terror, and later had further developments in the Forbidden Lore box set and on one of the first adventures in the Ravenloft setting, called Dwarfs of Darkness. After these initial appearances, the domain was removed from the core in the events of the Grand Conjunction, but it did not have much development after this relocation. During the final period of 3rd edition, the Wizards of the Coast website published an excellent short story written by Ari Marmel about a patient in an asylum who had a mysterious connection to Bluetspur. Bluetspur was reintroduced for the 5th edition in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and despite minor discrepancies at some descriptions, it remained largely similar to its previous characterization. For the first time in an official material, there was a short attempt to establish a history for the Illithid Godbrain, the Dark Lord of the domain. Throughout all these years of gap, until 5th edition reintroduced the domain, many fans created material to expand the domain. An idea I first saw on the Fraternity of Shadows forums and netbooks, and which was also explored by Mist Factor Press in the book Encyclopedia of Dark Lords and Domains, was that Bluetspur was not an island of dread in the mists, but was moved to the moon that shines over the skies of the demiplane of dread. We also used this idea in our first Black Feather book, The Dread Space, in which we present space-themed domains of dread in a Spelljammer and Ravenloft crossover. Given the little material we have on the domain, and the absence of a gazetteer of the region, I decided that in the next Bluetspur videos, I will also present as a complementary information the material we wrote about Bluetspur in our book Dread Space. So that there is no confusion about what is official setting material and what is material created by the Black Feather, I will leave the Black Feather logo whenever the material presented is taken directly from the Dread Space, to make it easier for those of you who are watching this video to separate our creation from the material created by official Ravenloft authors. If you like our ideas for the Dread Space, I will also leave the link below for our book, which presents 10 domains of dread with a space horror theme, and present a cluster of domains known as Dread Space. Are you ready? Imprisoned as insane patients in the asylum of Dominia, our attempts to find the whereabouts of Dr. Rudolf van Richten and uncover the secrets of Dr. the Cloud Heimfroth are discovered by our captors. The Cloud intends to use us as resilient guinea pigs, to be subject to an experiment, and to be mental conditioned through pain treatment, to act as his emissaries and establish contact with an alien entity. After sessions of behavior conditioned through pain, we are sent to cell 319 and left there by Dr. Dominiani and his staff in masked robes. Since the first disappearance of its mysterious patient, cell 319 has been a point of contact and a portal between Dominia and the lands of Blutspur, and the Illithid god brain has a chance to probe the minds of the inmates imprisoned in this room. Shortly after our imprisonment, the room begins to undergo transformations. First, it becomes hot, and the walls become damp and slimy, with strange liquids oozing from the wallpaper and squirting acids and gases. Its modifications become increasingly surreal and disturbing, with its walls becoming undulating and fluid, until they seem to close in on us, transporting us straight to the domain of Bluetspur. Hour of the Raven. Bluetspur is a domain of Ravenloft that addresses themes of cosmic horror and body horror, and features an alien wasteland dominated by a terrifying race of mind flayers Illithids and other aberrations. The alien landscapes and horrors of Bluetspur move away from Ravenloft's prevalent theme of gothic horror and come close to the works of Howard Phillips Lovecraft and other authors who created works of cosmic horror, presenting a disturbing and transcendental reality, which the mere glimpse of understanding is capable of destroying the sanity of those who contemplate it. The monstrosities of the Illithids, their ecology and reproduction, also bring a strong element of body horror, and films such as Alien the Eighth Passenger, The Fly, or The Thing can also be interesting sources of inspiration. Finally, the domain can also draw directly from more modern fears, such as the fear of alien abductions, and the strange scientific experiments that their victims claim to be subjected to. The strangeness of the Illithid culture does not allow us to pin down its technological era in a simple way. Although most of the domain is a vast wasteland of ruins, the Mind Flayer colonies have characteristics typical of this monstrous race. In adventures that I have already narrated in this domain, I have tried to give slightly different characteristics to this Illithid colony to achieve different horror effects. Once I gave it the appearance of a more insectoid and grotesque nest and lair, and on other occasions I have given the lair a more technologic and futuristic theme, inspired by the strange ships at the beginning of the film Alien, and the art style of the artist A.R. Giger. Bluetspur was initially presented in the Ravenloft Realm of Terror box set as a domain located in the south of the core, situated just below Barovia, Forlorn, and Hazlan. With the Grand Conjunction, however, the domain was swallowed by the mists and transported out of the core and became an island of dread, completely surrounded by the mists, which increased its horror and isolation. In Dread Space, we explore the possibility that Bluetspur was taken to the alien landscape of the moon that hovers over the demiplane of Dread, sometimes glimpsing the lands where it was previously located from a distance, and sometimes completely surrounded by the mist nebula of Dread Space. Bluetspur's domain is an alien landscape, desolated and barren. It is not possible to differentiate between day and night in Blutspur, which is constantly immersed in a red twilight. On its mountainous horizon, in all directions, it is possible to see a distinct pink and red glow from an unknown source. The only difference in the passage of time is its volatile climate. For about 12 hours, it's possible to see the clear starless sky of this desolate land, but its constant red twilight prevents any celestial body from being glimpsed. In the other 12 hours, however, the sky is abruptly taken over by a dark and terrible electrical storm, where lightning falls like water in a torrential rain. Only the flashes of the electrical discharges illuminate the surface, and it is clear that no living creature could survive such constant electrical storms, having to seek refuge underground. If you are using the Dread space and placing this domain on the moon of the demiplane of Dread, these moments where the sky is clear can allow you to glimpse the core and other domains of Dread, like glimpses of a planet shrouded in a dense misty nebula, while the moment of charged clouds and electrical storms may represent the period in which the moon passes through this misty nebula. The surface of Blutspur is composed of a rocky and mountainous soil, full of craters and peculiar rock formations. On the surface, you can find strange mountains and peaks that defy gravity in spiral shapes that even seems organic. There are countless caves and tunnels in these rock formations, and a long and complex underground network awaits those who seek refuge or take shelter inside. The region has some water sources and rivers that originate in its mountains, and that follow down the mountains, forming ravines and deep canyons, which continue to the border of mists. In the past, some of these rivers went to the lands of Hazlan, and some scholars from that domain believe that even today the waters find passage through the mists, creating a supernatural link between the two domains. An annoying metallic hum resonates in the air of Blutspur. Although it is apparently harmless, this constant vibration begins to unnerve and drive those who are not used to its presence crazy. Some feel disoriented, nauseated, and confused by its presence, or claim that they seem to feel a kind of pulse coming from its rocky peaks. The region appears to have a strange mental effect on those who sleep on these cursed grounds, and vivid nightmares are common, preventing full rest. On the devastated surface of Blutspur, it is possible to find ruins of an ancient civilization, but very little survived the abandonment and the constant electrical storms. There are no roads to facilitate navigating to this rugged and mountainous terrain. Below the surface are dark caves and tunnels that are the secret home of the mind flayers, and this complex network of caves connects different regions of the hive lair of these monstrous creatures. When Blutspur was part of the core of the Land of the Mists, sparse vegetation could be found on its surface, and near its watercourses it was possible to find undergrowth, mostly strips of sickly-looking dark yellow grass. After the domain was swallowed by the mists, following the Grand Conjunction, all vegetation died in its eternal red twilight. A phosphorescent fungi can be found in its crevices and caves, and a slime-sticky mucus mold grow below some stones. There is practically no animal life in this inhospitable domain, other than small insects and worms that roamed here when the domain was still connected to the core and managed to survive, and the aberrations created by the Illithids. One of these aberrations that can be found in these lands are the crustacean creatures called Cho, which live in the underground rivers and lakes. These aberrations are a mixture of crustaceans, insects and snakes, and demonstrate cruel intelligence, setting up ambushes for the unwary who approach the waters. Sinister rumors suggest that some of these monsters develop psionic abilities, becoming even more dangerous. Perhaps the direst threat to be found among the beasts that roam the surface of these lands are the vampire Illithids. The fruits of a bizarre experiment, these undead monsters are utterly insane and bestial, and roam, thirsty for blood and brain tissue, attacking anyone who crosses their path. The region is also plagued by other undead, especially ghosts and restless spirits, who haunt its caves and desolate places without finding peace after death. Finally, some reports indicate that sinister dread elementals have been found in their caves. In the distant past, the lands of Blutspur were once a human civilization, but today no human inhabitant can be found on its surface, and only destroyed ruins mark its former occupation. Some survivors of this ancient culture escaped the desolation of Blutspur while this domain was still connected to the core of Ravenloft. The Tuni are derived from a small group of 13 survivors who escaped these devastated lands, and most of them have settled in the city of Imol in Barovia. Centuries later, this small community still persists and tries to keep the Tuni language and culture alive. They seem to live in constant dread, however, fearing the monstrous silent masters, thinking they someday might return to capture and enslave the descendants of the fugitive Tuni. Rumors suggest that this small population hides supernatural mental gifts and is capable of extraordinary psionic feats. But if such circumstance is true, they hide these abilities under a cloak of secrecy. In the lands of Blutspur, the population can be divided into 3 groups: the slaves, the shattered brethren, and the Illithids or mind flayers. Slaves are mainly composed of humanoid races that were captured and enslaved by the mind flayers, and who now serve the most varied purposes. The mental compulsion of their psionic powers and the inhospitable nature of Blutspur make life for these poor enslaved creatures a cruel and desolate existence. Their life in deplorable conditions serve the most diverse purposes. Many are nothing more than food source, having their brain drained to feed the mind flayers. Others work on fungus and spore farms, producing food to sustain the slaves who live there. Some are kept for specific breeding purposes, and serve to house the Illithid tadpoles, which devour part of their brain before beginning the process of transforming their bodies. Rumors indicate that some slaves are kept untouched, and perhaps even begin to act as agents of the Illithids in other lands, sent forward to interfere in distant domains, where they can help this alien race in its objectives, and even help in the capture of other slaves. The cruelest fate that awaits these slaves, however, is to become victims of the dark experiments of this alien race. Their biomancy practices are used to test their slaves in attempts to improve their bodies to develop a superior and more efficient race of servants. Many suffer terrible torment in these painful experiments and have their sanity destroyed as their bodies are transformed by bizarre psionic energies and strange and unknown machinery. The other group that inhabits these lands are the grotesque and unfortunate creatures known as the Shattered Brethren. This insurgent group once belonged to slaves who were guinea pigs in biomancy experiments. In order to create more efficient slaves, their bodies were genetically altered to mix with animals, and now they are aberrant and hideous creatures with bestial and deformed bodies. By having natural or wild psionic talents, or developing such gifts after suffering the torments of painful experiments, they were able to break the chains that bound them to their silent masters and protect their minds against mental invasions. Now they live as refugees in the caves of this domain, united by their hatred against the mind flayers and fighting to survive. Finally, the true masters of this domain are the Illithids, an ancient race of creatures with humanoid bodies, but with elongated heads, with round warm mouths covered by long tentacles, with rubbery, moist and purple skin, whitish milky eyes without lids or irises, and endowed with incredible psionic gifts. These creatures have powerful intellects, and despite living in a colony under the tutelage of a powerful entity known as the Illithid God Brain, they retain some individuality with their own thoughts and ambitions. Illithids often wear extravagant clothing such as robes and cloaks, and for those inserted into their alien culture, it is possible to distinguish some traits of their personality and hierarchy in the colony through the details of their clothing. Although the original language of Blutspur was the language of the Tuni, today this language is dead and forgotten, except for fragments of texts that can be found in its ruins. Rumors among Tuni survivors in the city of Himol in Barovia tell of mythical sacred fragments of the 13 tomes of the Tuni, repositories of psionic knowledge and secrets that could give them the power to reconquer their homeland if they were ever found. The slaves who live here speak a myriad of different languages, as they are captured in different parts of the Land of the Mists. The Shattered Brethren, who escaped this life of slavery, develop a strange dialect and language over time, a mixture of sound and words from several different languages, adapted to their adulterated bestial mouths. The Illithids are capable of speaking and learning other languages, but the main method of communication is through telepathic messages, which is why many slaves call them the Silent Masters. They also know a form of communicating called Qualit, where different runes made with 4 lines are imbued with psionic energy and are capable of passing messages and even ideas and thoughts from those who created them. Despite being individualists and having the ability to impose their will through mental impulses, these creatures are also subjected to the commands of the highest entity of their colony, the Elder Brain called the Illithid God Brain. All Illithids of Blutspur owe him obedience and must carry out any task or activity imposed on them by this evil entity. Mind flayers are asexual and do not engage in any romantic relationship with each other. All of them, during a period of their life, are capable of producing eggs from which tadpoles eventually hatch. Kept in tanks together with the Illithid God Brain, some of these tadpoles survive by fighting for nutrients and even cannibalizing others of their species, and only a few reach maturity and become candidates to infect a victim and begin the process of metamorphosis. Once it has invaded a victim, it lodges itself in its brain and feeds on its cerebral matter and grows, replacing the brain of the victim and eventually causing the body to undergo a transformation until it becomes a new Illithid. The culture of the Illithids is completely alien, but there are some common beliefs among the race. The race considers itself superior to other forms of life and believes that their destiny is to dominate all creatures, whose only purpose is to serve them as food, servants, or as means of propagating their race. One can rarely perceive the emotions of mind flayers, who are known for their coldness, pragmatism, and arrogance. Their culture values knowledge as the greatest source of power, and they are highly competitive and amoral. Their presence in a colony imposes cooperation on them, and to a certain degree, even the psionic masters, endowed with great mental powers, are slaves and servants of the Illithid god brain. They can create and appreciate art, generally through intricate geometric patterns, capable of emanating and resonating psionic energies, which are present in several architectural patterns in their colony. These creatures feed not only in search of basic nutrients, but also psychic energies, and the preferred food of these creatures is the brain tissue of sentient creatures, although they can also feed on other foods and body parts. Their gastronomic preferences are influenced by the quality of the brain they feed, and on factors such as race, intellectual capacity, emotions, imagination, sanity, arcane knowledge, and sense of greatness and importance, influence the pleasure and sustenance they derive from devouring these brains. Every Illithid is endowed with innate and impressive psionic abilities. Their appreciation for all types of knowledge leads some of them to study the arcane arts. No religion is practiced in Blutspur, and any trace of the fate of the ancient Tuni civilization has now been erased from existence. The Illithids of Blutspur do not appear to practice any type of religion in the way other races do, and have no major concerns about the afterlife, as the fate of their brains after death is to be integrated and absorbed by the Illithid god brain, the ultimate authority of Blutspur, who governs and coordinates all the colony through telepathic means. The colony is ruled by this elder brain of gigantic proportions and immeasurable evil, and all Illithids are servants of his will. This collective mentality and mental submission makes the entire colony extremely efficient in its objectives. The Illithids, in turn, are masters of the slaves they dominate, as their servants, to perform the most diverse tasks, and are rarely seen with less than 2 mental slaves in their vicinity. Although there is an internal hierarchy of power and command, all true power emanates from the Illithid god brain, and its will is the absolute law in its domain. Despite this, the Shattered Brethren challenge its authority, and rumor claims that some Illithids managed to escape its domination and even hide their thoughts from this entity, and perhaps the past of Blutspur can hide clues about other insurgencies. For a long time, we wandered lost through this desolate and alien landscape, not knowing where we should go. A strange and disturbing buzzing sound makes us feel nauseous and uncomfortable, and a terrible storm clouds form over our heads. Soon, a terrible electrical storm begins, and it becomes clear that we need to find some kind of shelter if we are to survive. We enter one of the caves in a ravine, but soon realize that we are not alone. Grotesque, deformed, and animalistic creatures approach us, and we are ready for combat, when one of them manages to speak telepathically in our minds. These monstrous and bestial creatures are not our enemies, and they call themselves the Shattered Brethren, and offer us a safe place to shelter from the lightning storm. Through this telepathic dialogue, we learn in despair about the terrible place we are in, and the dangers of our situation. At the edge of a bonfire, and to the sound of constant thunder, we ask the leader of the Shattered Brethren to reveal to us what could have caused such devastation to these lands. Join us, subscribe to this channel, and activate notifications, and let's unveil the history of Bluetspur.